Good evening, everybody. If everybody will start to kind of take a seat so that we can start with the Lake Travis School Board candidates. They're going to go first. There may be people who come in and out during the evening that maybe couldn't be here at 6, or who are most interested in Lakeway City Council or Bee Cave City Council, so just be aware that people will be coming in and out. Okay, awesome. We're going to wait just a couple minutes for people that I see that are coming in, but I really appreciate everybody that's here. We are, just so you know, we're going to Facebook Live this event on my old campaign page, which is Jennifer Fleck, Texas Strong, and we're going to share it on a couple of other Facebook pages, maybe Lake Travis Area Constitutionalists, or you can share it from my Facebook page too. And then we're also going to record it and post it on our website for people who missed it and can go back then to the website and watch the whole thing replay. So I hope that's a service to all the candidates. That's the purpose of tonight, is so many people aren't informed. Well, as you all know, so many people don't even vote in local elections, in small local elections. So the idea is to get the word out about the candidates and hopefully inspire our local residents to vote, and then also we also want our voters to be informed. So that is the purpose and the motive of tonight. Okay, Tony, you want to come in here? I want to just do the Pledge of Allegiance real fast, and then we'll bring the 3 Lake Travis ISD Board Trustees candidates up here. I'm going to start the pledge. If everybody else stand,
Please stand. Hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, appreciate it. If the 3 trustee candidates will come up and just sit in the center 3 chairs. All of the candidates brought some sort of campaign material or business cards, so if you want to get in touch with them and offer your assistance and your help to help them run the next 6 weeks, that would be great. And they also brought their yard signs, which are all out in the foyer, and I'm sure they'd be happy to let you take any that you like or share with your neighbors. Okay, let's get started. First, I'm going to have the candidates take 2 or 3 minutes to introduce themselves. So first is Carabelle.
Hi there, thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Carabelle, and I am running for Lake Travis School Board, Place 2. And I am thrilled to be running. I've already gotten so involved with what goes on at Lake Travis. I have 2 kids in the district. I have a 7th grader at the middle school, and I have a freshman at the high school. We moved our family here about 1.5 years ago from California. We were looking for more conservative values, and we thought Texas was the state to give us that. And we have been thrilled to be here, very blessed and grateful. Then COVID happened, and I got a little bit concerned about the way things were being run as far as the protocols and the lack of transparency. So I started writing my emails and reaching out to the principals as well as the superintendent, and it really spiked an interest in what goes on here in the community of Lake Travis. And I saw a need for education for bullying prevention. I think if we start at the school level, K through 12, this is something that we saw in California, and it really helped children and families be accountable in the community and as well as at school. I think the most important thing is rigorous academic education at the school, and I think continuing that and educating our teachers about the #1 important reason why our kids are at school. I am running on Students First. I believe children are our future, and an investment in them is an investment in our future. And regardless of having kids in the schools, everyone in this community is affected by the future, and that is our children. So I will always stand up for children of any race, any financial background, anything. It doesn't matter. I don't see color, and I hope, you know, the teachers as well don't see color. And I think that it's very important that we focus on rigorous academic education and focus on children. If we didn't have children, we wouldn't have schools. So that is going to be my number one platform that I'm running on. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Spike McBride. I moved to Texas in 2000 and Lake Travis in 2011. I was recruited out of here to go work for Amazon in Seattle, and the hyper growth there really opened my eyes to how a mismanaged school district and the policies that they bring in can hurt a community and divide a community. We were lucky enough to move back here in January 2018. We had never sold our house, still had ties to the community, and over the last 3 years, I really saw what was the direction and what we're seeing in other nearby communities, whether it's Westlake or Cedar Park, and my son plays travel baseball, so I'm around a lot of these other parents, and hearing their concerns firsthand and hearing what their kids are up against, whether it's the curriculum that they're being forced to ingest, or just the facilities and the hyper growth that they're experiencing as well. So it got me motivated. I love volunteering. I'm very involved in youth sports, but I wanted to get involved on the academic side because I think that's really what sets the course for a child's life, is how well they do academically, what type of facilities they have, and what's the offering. And there are, I think, a lot of holes. I'll get into those later, of where I think we can take the schooling and what else we can offer the community. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, place one. Thank you.
My name is Todd Taylor, and I am running for place one on the school board. I moved to Bee Cave in 2009, so we will have been here 12 years in May. Before that, we were down in Austin. So I've been in Austin in this area since 1995. So we've been part of Central Texas for quite a long time. I've actually worked with this district, so I've worked with Lake Travis Independent School District and their IT department, and I've done that for 9 years. So I'm very well aware of the district and sort of how it's structured and how it's laid out. So I have quite a bit of insider knowledge on how the district operates and how it treats staff, teachers, students, and parents. Total, I've worked in education for 15 years, so I have experience in other districts as well, so I've seen how other places operate. My sister is also a kindergarten teacher, so she's done that for longer than I've been in education, so she's been around for a long time, and she's seen a lot of changes and very well aware of how COVID and all these things have impacted student learning and student growth as far as that goes. I believe this district can be something that is excellent. I don't believe it is there right now. I think that it has a lot of growth potential. I think that a lot of times we take an easy way out in education, and we should be demanding of all of the people who represent us in education to strive for excellence, and to strive to be the absolute best we can. And we don't always cater to those kids that are up at the very top. And Lake Travis has a lot of those kids, and we need to make sure that we focus on them and provide for them as well, because they will be the future, and they'll be the ones who lead the way when we're older. So I think it's very important to understand that we're building an entire system that impacts not only the 3 years that we represent you, but will have lasting impacts on the community and our society at large.
Okay, so briefly, just so you know, there's 2 positions open on the Lake Travis ISD School Board. There's position 1 and position 2. And so there's 2 candidates running for position 1 and 3 candidates running for position, help me, did I get it wrong? 3 candidates running for position 1 and 2 candidates running for position 2. And these 3 were nice enough to join us tonight, which is awesome. There's one position is actually open. So the position that's open has 3 candidates running. And then Kara is running against the only incumbent that's running, and her name is Lauren White. My second question is, and so the candidates are supposed to try to keep their answers to a few minutes so that we can keep moving along. Hint, hint. What do you think the role is of a school board trustee?
I believe the role, and actually looking it up on LTISD, is to govern the district and work with the superintendent, as well as being a communication liaison to the community. So if I win, and I hope that I do, I will be open to all people of the community, anyone, and always makes myself accessible, whether it be Facebook or my website, email, or my phone. I think communication is the key to success, and I saw a little bit lack there in the last year or so I would like to do that for you.
I think the overall vision and direction is set by the board. I think another thing that we have to do is the fiscal conservative responsibility is in the district that we have, we send so many of our tax dollars out that we have to make sure we're stretching the dollars that we do get to keep. So I think it's the oversight, the vision, the direction, and then making sure that we're holding folks accountable.
I think a board member, a trustee, is ultimately there to represent you. I think we've lost sight of that in a lot of ways in this district and other districts as well. We're representatives, so we're there to represent the community, to represent the values of the people that have elected us into those positions. So it's always important to talk to the community, know what the community actually thinks and what they feel. As far as the administration, you have to remember as a board member that the superintendent is actually your employee, that he's just an employee of the district. You are not his friend. You're not there to just rubber stamp anything the administration wants, but you're there to actually make sure that he's holding to our community standards and to anything that the community deems to be important. So it's very important for the board members to realize that they are part of the community and they're not part of the district. And I think our board has taken some steps in the wrong way there, that they view themselves as there to support the superintendent. And they're there to support us as community members, as students, as parents, as teachers and staff. And so it's very important for the board members to realize that they're there. And a lot of times I've heard people who go to the board, who grieve the board, and take it all the way to that level, that they don't feel like their concerns are being heard. And so the board needs to recognize that it's important for them to take anything that comes to them, a complaint, a suggestion, take it all very seriously, because they are our communication between the community and the school district. So they need to have open lines of communication, and they always need to be open to dissenting voices, and to make sure that they're not just simply following along like they're employees of the school district or employees of the superintendent himself and just going along with what he wants, but really making sure that he's held to the standards that the district or the community sets for him.
So I'm going to have a couple of people kind of rotate around. If you have a question that you'd like to submit to the school board trustees as we go along, if you'll just kind of put your hand up and they'll bring you an index card, and then we'll have those passed up at the end of this panel. The second question, this year has been a difficult year due to COVID restrictions. If the TEA allows school districts the freedom to relax restrictions as it has recently done, would you advocate for maintaining the present restrictions or relaxing those restrictions? Why, and what do you perceive as the biggest hurdles to returning to normal? I'm going to start with Todd this time.
I think we probably should relax most of them. Most of the teachers that I know were very comfortable coming back to work. And I think inadvertently, the restrictions created some divides within our staff. You had teachers who were allowed to teach from home, and then you had other people, and well-publicized news event that the chemistry teacher, no, it was a physics teacher who wasn't allowed to teach from home, so he ended up resigning his position. So there are some divides that are still there. You've got to understand that needs to be tackled through administration and through the principals on campuses, making sure that teachers are actually back at work and feeling comfortable back at work. Students need to return, because one of the things we've heard is our kids are being more depressed now. The lack of socialization, being out there on their own, they weren't really prepared for that. I don't think any of us were really prepared for that. And so we need to make sure that we can get them back involved in things that are healthy, to get them back learning and back growing, and to help them recover from some disorders that a lot of them have gotten into. This obsessive disorders, a lot of them have fallen behind in their workload. I think parents were well-meaning, but a lot of them got like 2 or 3 screens per computer, and the kids now play games instead of actually paying attention. I know there were kids who are jumping on trampolines when they're during class, and so you have all this stuff that goes on, and then you have teachers who are in the classroom who are trying to instruct them while they're in the classroom, and then they have the kids that are away. And it's like my sister, she's a kindergarten teacher, and she said it was like WWE in her room a couple of days ago, that she had one kid who was standing up on his desk who was disrupting the class, and then while she was dealing with that, you had 2 other kids that were hitting each other with chairs. So the world is a little bit different now, because these kids, they're not learning to share, especially at that low level, the kindergarten level. One of the most important things is these kids learn to share. They come from households, a lot of them are single children, and they need to learn how to socialize with other kids and learn how to actually engage with other kids. And we've told these kids they have to separate 6 feet apart, don't interact. Everyone has their own scissors, has their own crowns, everything is theirs. So now we have this generation of kindergartners that they have really latched onto its mind. So we've got to break that. We have to realize that that's going to carry on to different grade levels. So we have to work with our teachers. We have to make sure that our teachers are heard, because a lot of them are on the front lines. They know how to deal with this, and a lot of them proposed having sort of an advanced curriculum for the beginning of next year, when hopefully all the students are back in person, and you'll reinforce the stuff they should have learned in kindergarten or 1st grade or 2nd grade, so you get to like a really concentrated, in-depth learning to make sure that we bring these kids back onto the level. And unfortunately, I think that getting back to normal is going to be a very slow process, because we have to evaluate the needs of all the kids now, because they have fallen behind. We can't ignore the fact that for a year and a half, our kids have not gotten what we consider a normal education, that they're in this great experiment with everyone else that we now are going to have the ramifications of, and some of these kids can be left behind. And I know personally, like, it sounds like a silly thing, but I grew up all over the place. My dad was in the military, and somehow I managed to miss vowels and consonants. I had no idea what the 2 of them were. So just by chance, I happened to miss that by moving from one place to another, different grade levels, taught different things. And so these silly little things that you should know, sometimes you lose. So you have that kid out there bouncing around on that trampoline, you didn't pay any attention to what was going on. So we have to make sure our curriculum department actually evaluates our teacher, or evaluates our students, and sort of knows their baseline, and then we build things to help bring the kids back up and make sure that what was a 1.5-year incident doesn't turn into a 30-year deficit for these kids that are in school right now.
I think it's important to step back to where we were last March and ask the question, why did we shut down, and why did we do all those things? And if you look at the science of where we are now, by midsummer, my estimate is anybody who wants a vaccine will have a vaccine, right? And CDC has already said it's no longer 6 feet, it's 3 feet. I don't know of how many school desks are within 3 feet, right? The aisle alone is probably 4 feet. So the need to keep the restrictions and keep the lockdown and keep the kids away from each other, I think every reason why we did it in the first place is potentially gone. So we have to ask ourselves, what's in the best interest of the children? And you have to get back to an environment where they're encouraged to be around each other, They're encouraged to have that social interaction. My biggest concern is when we get through this and we get into September and get back to some sense of normalcy, how many of the kids have been locked down and away from each other for 18 months? What's their mental, the challenges they're gonna have with mental interaction with each other, and that support mechanism has to be there. If you look at the counselors today, they're really class counselors. They're career counselors. They're not a counselor in the sense of mental health. So I think we have to support not only the kids, but the teachers and the administration on that side as well. So I think we get back to pre-pandemic, because every marker that we would check is covered, and then we support them to get them back to that socialization. Yeah, my thought, I'll use a microcosm. My son's a football player, so they play 7-on-7, which is basically rough one-hand touch. Okay. I'm a big believer of you let the student pick, right? There's one kid on his team that doesn't go anywhere without a mask. My son, personally, when he's playing, he doesn't wear it. But when that kid's mask ripped, my son ran to his bag, grabbed another one, and got it for him, right? So I think there's place for everybody in there, and I think it's up to the individual child in this case, because any of the markers aren't there. But if a kid has to wear a mask to make himself feel better, we're all for it. Support him, but then equally support the child that doesn't want to wear one.
I am definitely for lifting the COVID restrictions. I worked in the medical field for 10 years, as well as had a son in speech therapy for 6. And the children are missing out on a big component by not seeing faces, not seeing smiles, not being able to read facial expression. Speech therapy, especially in the younger ages, we have a lot of kids that need speech therapy, and they are being hindered by masks. Masks are personal protective equipment, PPE. That is your choice, and I 100% support freedom to choose. We need freedom to choose. We also need to follow the law. The mandate, GA 29, was lifted, and children should have the right, so should parents, if they want to wear personal protective equipment. I met with Superintendent Norton last Friday and had about a 1-hour meeting with him and discussed the science. The personal protective equipment that the Texas Education Agency purchased to the tune of about $5 million, the FDA filing states may or may not protect against the moisture barrier. That statement proves, without a doubt, that masks have not been proven to protect. With that, I definitely want freedom to choose. I think our children have missed out on so much this year, socially and mentally, and the statistics show that they have not had that academic education that they deserve in Texas. In Texas, they are entitled to a quality education. And there is a Texas Education Code 37.0023 that states masks are an adverse technique that could cause potential mental and physical harm. That is in the Texas Education Code. So I am not certain that our mask policy is not against the law. So we all need to be active voices for children. We need transparency. We need to know the law. We need to know what's really going on, because our children depend on us, and we need to be their voice. Thank you.
Historically, what do you think Lake Travis ISD does well, and what could Lake Travis ISD do better? Give an example of each from a parent's perspective or as an employee.
Being here for 1.5 years, I have seen that there is great community and great praise for the for the sports here in Lake Travis. My son was thrilled to be on the football team and also the basketball team. There's a lot of community support for that. My daughter was very lucky to be in a theater and dance. She really enjoyed the extracurriculars. Coming from California, the class sizes are about half of what we had in California. The teachers have been above and beyond what I expected. They have reached out via email, phone calls at times. I did not get that in California. I really feel that Lake Travis has some amazing teachers, and I want to continue to support them. I think putting students first means partnering with parents and supporting teachers to get the outcome that we want, and that is successful children. I do think that communication has lacked. I do think that transparency has lacked. I have sent, since September, I have sent multiple emails to the superintendent, to the district, asking questions about certain things, and they have gone unanswered. I have a real problem with that. If our district leaders can't answer questions and expect us to only have 3 minutes at board meetings, that's a problem for me. And I would like more communication with regards to questions that I have, so.
I'll echo the praise for the teachers. When we moved here in 2011, it was the reputation of the school district, but more importantly, it was the love of the teachers and what they show for the students. I have a 13, at the time he was 4, but 13, soon to be 14-year-old, a 7 and a 5-year-old. And every time I ask them how their day was, they start with how their teacher was. And to me, that echoes why we're here and why we moved here, is at least specifically to the school. So super happy with that. I think we have to support them more. Moving to the challenge areas, I think there's 2 areas, right? Transparency. I think we need more transparency in the decisions. And I think we have to double down on what we offer the students, right? We have to offer more, starting at the high school level, robotics programs, coding programs. If you look at other communities, they offer those things. So although we have a great rating, we have to back that up with great offering. Our facilities are getting dated, right? Sure, we have new elementary and middle schools, but the high school's dated, right? So we have to look at that. We have a demographic study that's going to come out and really say who's moving in, what are the ages of the population as well as the kids. And then we have to make the evaluation, are we going to invest in the facilities for the kids? So that's it.
What Lake Travis does well, I think one of the most impressive things is the GT program at the elementary school level. Each campus has a massively unique individual that teaches that class. So unfortunately, most of you don't get to go from campus to campus. You don't get to meet the different teachers, the different personalities. And so each campus is very fortunate at the elementary school level to have a wonderful GT teacher that cares about kids, that pushes those kids in a way that they wouldn't be pushed otherwise. And it's always fun to watch them. It's fun to watch those kids because you're seeing little kids think beyond what normal little kids think. And so I've had the opportunity to score the robotics competition at that. And it was always fun to watch because they had to take it from the elementary school to another campus to do this competition. Of course, something always breaks or something doesn't work right. So you're watching these little kids, it could be 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade kids who are dealing with real world scenarios. That you take something you're supposed to compete or present, and it falls apart on you, and you're struggling with your teams. So they're working together, they're working with their teachers, they're trying to get the resources to get things back up and running the way they want it to run. So it's a very fascinating thing to watch, that even at a young age, kids can start to pick up on these skills and abilities. And so it's great for the GT. I think the GT kids have a wonderful place, and we need to expand that for other kids as well, so not all kids miss out on those unique opportunities to learn and sort of see what life can be outside the bigger things that we teach in elementary school. What our district doesn't do well, I think there is a culture and climate problem. You talk about having wonderful teachers out here, and we do have a lot of really good teachers, but we have to understand that we are right up against Austin, that has a better pay structure. They pay into Social Security, they have other benefits, they're really huge. And then we have Westlake, which is very similar to us, and then you have Leander, and you have Round Rock. You have all these competing districts for a resource, which the most valuable resource we have are our teachers and our employees. And so you have teachers that are teachers of the year. I think one of them went to the state level, and she left the buoy because she wasn't getting the support from the high school administration. She asked for some stuff, they wouldn't give it to her, she got frustrated, so she left. And she's not the only one that has left after being recognized as Teacher of the Year. I know several of the people who left after being recognized as being extraordinary teachers. So we need to make sure that we're retaining our staff. And one of the complaints that I've heard from teachers is that they feel like the administration often treats them as it's an honor to work at Lake Travis. And you can't have that attitude. You have to respect our teachers, you have to respect our staff, because there is Westlake down the road, there is AISD down the road. People have choices of where they work, and you want them to feel valued here, and you want them to feel supported here. So we need to work on that culture, we need to work on that climate to make sure that the teachers feel valued, and when they feel valued, those high-level teachers stay around, and they can help our new teachers. We also need to take advantage of the Texas incentive allotment, which pays teachers who meet certain goals, and it'll help them make more money. So we can essentially give teachers raises out here based on state allotment. And they also have a mentoring allotment. So we can actually bring in money to help mentor new teachers. Because last time I checked, I think most teachers average 5 years in this profession. And they don't leave because of the pay, they usually leave because of lack of support, classroom management. So if we have a strong mentoring program, and we use the resources the state is giving us, we can build those into great teachers that have the support they need, and then you keep them here with the incentives the state provides, so that we have even a stronger group of people that can teach all our kids.
All right, so I provided these 4 questions to the candidates prior to tonight, so they kind of had an opportunity to kind of prepare an answer. So this is the last question that I gave them, and I'm also going to incorporate 3 people have submitted a question that is related to this one. So this week, Lake Travis ISD began community summits with an organization called Education Elements to help develop a new strategic plan that focuses on diversity. Do you think that diversity is a problem in Lake Travis ISD that needs to be addressed? And if so, why? And when I say diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some people call it critical race theory. Some people have heard even the terms white dominant culture or white fragility. These are some of the topics that are on the website of this organization. I want to know if the trustees think that this is a problem, and if so, why? That needs to be addressed in the district.
I've done some research on Education Elements, what the company that district is partnering with, and I found some wording that was very concerning to me. I have not seen inclusion as a problem here. My son was fortunate enough to be on 2 sports teams with a diverse group of children. My daughter as well in theater, and they have teachers that are, of different races, and I've not seen it a problem. I've not seen anything that would cause me concern. Coming from California, we're very diverse, much more diverse than it is here in Texas, but I don't see it as a problem. I do see it as a problem when you put race before anything. It automatically causes a divide and makes one side feel less than or possibly not as important. Education Elements, they worded something that said we need to focus on those groups first. And that was very concerning to me, because when you focus on one group first, you're leaving out the other groups. And all of the children here in Lake Travis deserve the same chance. They deserve the same opportunity. And we are focusing on a certain group first. That is not okay to me. That's not equitable. That is not what I want my children to see. It's not what I want them to be taught. And I want them to be empowered to know that that is not the way we want to raise our children. So I'm not going to be for that.
I think the challenge you run into when you start looking at equity versus equality is who's making that evaluation, right? So if you look at a community, I think it's important not to have a blind spot when you have a diverse culture to make sure that you hear everybody's voice. But then you have to step back and what would a reasonable person evaluate that at? And when you bring in these consulting firms, last time I checked, nobody hires a consulting firm to be told you're good. They expect you to come in with an entire agenda and change the culture. So looking through the lens of who's making that evaluation and what they're paid to do concerns me. And then when you look at it and you say one race has to take a step down or be held down in order to help another, I just don't agree. I think, I call it the sunshine theory. There's plenty of sunshine to go around. I don't need to steal anybody else's, and they shouldn't steal ours, right? So with that, hear the voice from every culture, every aspect, every diverse team. We may feel it's inclusive, but if they don't, then it's not. And I think it's important to hear that voice, address their concerns, and make it better for everybody, but not at the sake of another group by arbitrarily holding them down.
I think one of the big things in education that we have to watch out for are these companies, and I might get in trouble here, but they're grifters. That's what these companies are.
Mm-hmm.
They're individuals who, they form these companies in order to make money. And they've got easy marks in education and school boards because these things start floating around out in society and they sound really good, and so we jump on them as adults in an adult world. And I don't know how many of you remember when you were little kids or you have children now, how great little kids are. Little kids don't care about race. They don't care about gender. They don't care about anything. I mean, we all had friends who were all different types of races. I grew up around the world. I knew Tongans. I knew all these different cultures. And you just liked friends. You just had people that you enjoyed hanging out with. It didn't matter what race they came from. The biggest problem you had is when you tried to call and their mom answered the phone and you couldn't pronounce her name right and she didn't know who you were asking for. And so you just sat there and you kept repeating the name over and over again and the mom didn't understand you. And so you got these funny things that are, that's the different cultures we have in America. You have all these different cultures that came together and we all represent different things, and it's a wonderful world. It's not anything that we should be ashamed of or beaten down about. And so we don't need our school district to focus on our differences. We don't need to pay people. This is your money. Your money is going to these grifters to come in and tell you your kids are awful people. And so you don't need that. Your kids are awesome people. They need to be taught, and all adults need to be taught, how to communicate with each other. My wife, she was an English teacher, and they had this counterpoint argument that they would do once a month. They bring in articles and they talk about this. We need to teach our children, and we probably need to teach our adults how to have constructive conversations that are backed by knowledge and not ad hominem attacks on people and not appeals to emotion and not appeals to authority. We need to have the knowledge ourselves. We need to be able to talk and have these difficult conversations with each other. So yes, that starts in schools. The teachers should be doing that with their classes, English classes, maybe even a little further down, where that you read both sides of an argument. You decide which side you're going to do, and then you learn how to defend it, and you learn how to defend those things without attacking people and going after easy points. And so none of you kids need to feel bad about who they are. They all need to feel special because they are. They're all awesome. All your kids are great kids, and they're trying to grow up in this world. They're trying to get through COVID. And why in the world are we stacking this stuff on top of kids who haven't been in school for a year and a half? Why do we want to belittle kids that have missed socialization opportunities as is and tell them, hey, wait, you're not as good as somebody else, or you need to really focus on each other's differences. You're all out here, you're all playing football, you're all going to school. Let's focus on what brings us together, and let's as a community agree that we don't need outside influences, we need community standards, and as long as those standards are being met, we should all be happy with the direction we're going.
Okay, so these questions were submitted by persons attending. Please discuss your viewpoint on the continued drug testing program at the high school, not really voluntary, i.e. random testing. They talk to them, name them, potentially in-school suspension, loss of sports ability, cost of the program. How is it being monitored to show that it's successful? Do you want to clarify?
So sorry, so it's kind of very similar to what we just said, you know, they started the program because they said they thought we had a huge drug problem at Lake Travis, which we probably do, right? So I know when my kids were there, they would pull the kids out randomly. Some kids would be tested 8 times, some once maybe. And then there are consequences for that. Now, they originally said it was all going to be voluntary, then it turned into not just voluntary if you want to play these sports at the high school, if you want to have a parking pass and be able to drive your car there when you're older, you have to agree that you're going to be part of this. My question really, and follow the money also, part of that, is the bottom line of the question is what's the efficacy of this? Does anybody know? How do any of you candidates know how that has been played out? Like if that is effective, what they're currently doing?
Okay.
May or may not.
If you don't know, like, again, these questions are just now being submitted. Some of these candidates are running for school board because they love this community, love families, and love kids, and may not have the answer to every question. So, if they can answer, they will.
I hate the drug testing policy. It's been, yeah, exactly. It's been completely inefficient. And it came back where they were getting so many negative results that they started to spin it. And it was, well, now we're giving kids the opportunity to say no, because they say, well, I might be drug tested, so that's giving me an out, so I'm not using drugs because, you know, you might test me. My concern is, what are we teaching these kids? I mean, in order to have a place to park, you gotta pee in a cup. You're guilty. You're guilty until you pee in this cup and prove that you're innocent. And that's not the standard I was raised with. That was not what my parents taught me, that everyone is innocent. And so in order to participate in parking and in sports, we're making people give up their rights, freely give up rights, and surrender to this bureaucracy to make sure. And in the meantime, these kids are all smarter than you. Let's just be honest. They're masking agents you can use. They know it. They know more than you do about drugs. I used to work by Adobe Middle School, and Planet K was down there. There's a funny story about, there was a kid, he used to sell drugs, and he found that it was actually more profitable to go into Planet K because they have an agent in there that you can buy that'll help flush stuff out of your system. I think at the point it was alcohol. And so he'd actually stand on the corner, and these businessmen would drive by, and he would mark that stuff like $5 a pop, and they would pay him instead of going in and buying it. So not only are your kids aware of the fact that there are ways to get around these drug tests, they'll actually profit off other people to help them get around it. So drug testing is only teaching your children to be complicit and to go along with what adults say, and especially at the high school level, I think we need to teach our kids to be more critical and start critical thinking and that critical analysis so that they grow into great citizens and not people who just simply take what the state tells them. And if you want to participate, you'll do it. And if you don't, too bad for you. So I think we need to be very careful about what we're teaching our kids.
In researching this, my understanding is this was really parent-driven, right? None of the kids were signing up for drug testing. The parents really push an agenda that says, we believe we have a problem, and when they look at neighboring communities, you know, the old saying, why do you rob a bank? That's where the money is. Kids were coming out here from other school districts because this is where the drugs were, right? So now, where are we today? I have a challenge with whether it's federal level or the local level. The rules are the rules unless a pandemic hits. And so they've suspended all drug testing. So it's either an issue or it's not an issue. But why would we suspend it if it was such an issue? So how do you reinstate it after the fact, right? So I have a challenge with, if you're gonna hold to a standard, then hold to the standard. And if it was not necessary to test, why go back to it? It wasn't like it all of a sudden went away. In fact, you could argue the kids were getting, at the high school level at least, were getting more creative in meeting each other outside and having parties and things like that. So I just have a fundamental challenge with, why did we suspend it if it was so important? And then how are you going to then reinstate it?
When I was growing up in high school, if you were caught with drugs, you were expelled. Drinking, if a football player or cheerleader was caught drunk, they were kicked off the team. I am definitely for, helping kids, but freedom. I think our children do not need to be presumed guilty. My child, to my knowledge, and pray that he will never get involved with drugs. If he does, I believe that's my parenting issue. I believe that if I need to be testing my son or daughter, it can be done at home or in my doctor's office. I don't agree that the school should be doing that. And I also don't agree that if you're testing one random kid and not the other, I also have a real problem with that as well. Because why are we singling out people? If you think somebody has a problem, let's get them help. But until you know that, I think that really crosses a line. And I think we need to pour into these kids love and trust and show them by leading by example what we expect of them and want them to become. I think, especially coming off of this pandemic with COVID, our children are struggling, really struggling. And I think the more we pile on to them with the things that are being talked about, it's gonna break some children. And we're gonna have a huge problem with the lack of support in our district for our teachers and our children to support the needs of these students. And we need to really look at that. And as board members, they are responsible for following up, holding each other in the community accountable for what's going on. So how did the drug testing work? Was it effective? Was it beneficial? What are the statistics on that? We need to see that. How much money was invested? We need to look at all of it, but I think you cross a fine line when you are assuming that everyone has a drug problem and everyone needs to be tested.
All right, this probably is the last question, but it came up today on the online community summits that we had, so I think it's something that's on everybody's mind. The student population at Lake Travis High School is growing. Which option do you favor to deal with this growth and why? Now this is assuming we go back to school, because actually this isn't a problem if we don't. However, assuming we go back to school, keep adding students to the existing campus, the high school campus, add a second high school, which could be a second full high school or potentially a fine arts high school, or build on a high school with full capacity. I don't know what that says. Anybody help me? If you submit it, anyway, you get the idea. Let's each trustee candidate will just talk about how they would. Yes, John.
There was option A, just keep adding facilities at the current location. Option B is build a fine arts school with limited with no athletic opportunities. B or C is a full capability high school mirroring Lake Travis, which would mean the Lake Travis High School population would go down while this other one built up.
Okay, we're going to start with Kara, and this is the last question. Thank you, everybody, for your attention today.
I live off of 71 and I see nothing but growth. Houses are being put up everywhere I look. And it's concerning that we have one high school. It was concerning to me when I first moved here. I'm like, wow, over 1,000 students in the freshman class. That's a lot. You have to walk over half a mile from one end to the other. There's a lot of students there. I don't think, I'd have to do more research, I don't think we have the capability of building on to accommodate the growth. I think there is a need for another school, whether that be a fine arts school and dividing the kids by who wants to be in athletics and who wants to be in fine arts. I think we could see a problem there as well. I think that there are students that enjoy both. My son had the opportunity to take art this year. It might not be something that he wants to continue, but he learned a lot, and his teacher, Miss Na, was amazing. I mean, he did a beautiful portrait. I was really stunned. I think when we look at the developing brain, it's not just academics and it's not just art, it's all of it. Brains aren't fully developed till age 25, and we need to expose, in my opinion, children to everything, to see what they like, to see what they enjoy, to see where they can grow. I think I've asked this question, why is there not another school? And I do know that there's about 60 acres off of 71 that has been purchased, so I do know that it's coming, it has to come. We can't sustain the growth in the high school that we have. Some concerns was, oh, if we do that, we're gonna drain the talent pool, and Lake Travis won't be #1 in football, or they will lack this in sports. And I thought, whoa, wow, okay, so we're only catering to the athletic children? That doesn't seem right. But I think going with fear that we're gonna dilute something is not what I wanna teach my kids either. We don't teach fear in my house. We lead by faith. And I grew up in a town in Northern California, very fortunate, grew up in a town called Danville, California. And we had 2 huge high schools, Monte Vista and San Ramon. And I can tell you that there's professional athletes that came out of both schools. I can tell you when homecoming came, the city thrived. People from around the area came to Danville to go to our game, to support our schools, and the restaurants and the businesses thrived because it was the battle of the city, and it was so amazing and such an awesome place to live. And there was 2 wonderful high schools. And I also think this year my son was fortunate enough, he's very tall, 6'4", and you can't teach height, so he was fortunate enough to be one of 20 kids that made the basketball team. There was 80 kids that didn't, and of those 80, there were several kids that were on my son's league teams, and those kids were amazing. And I literally cried. I cried, and I still get some teary-eyed because I cried for those parents and I cried for those children because I thought they deserved the opportunity that my son did, and they weren't given it because there wasn't enough room. So when we are going to say we don't want to dilute the talent pool, I think you have to look at the adults that don't think that they have the talent to develop a second team.
I mentioned earlier the demographic study. I think it's important to look at the data and say, where's the growth? I think it's also important to look at other school districts within Texas, right? There's one that's the biggest in the country. What's good, what's bad about that model? Because we are at a fork in the road, and we're either gonna continue to invest in the resources in the current campus, or we're gonna build a second high school. So there's options in each of those, and then you have to ask yourself, what's the best model? Is it a fine arts, or do we have a 6A and a 4A school? Do we have a community that builds around each other? I've seen it in other areas where it divides the community, right? I love this community. What I hate to do is see a second high school, and then people, it used to be a train track where I lived, but depend on which side of the train track you lived, you can literally see people saying, oh, I don't want to be in that school, I'm moving to the other one. Oh, Carter's staying here, I'm going there. That divides the community faster than you can believe. So I think it's important to look at the demographics, look at the big school. What are the pros, what are the cons, right? Outside looking in, do we have an entire administrative staff that we have to hire that's just added cost? And that drains from potentially some other things we could do at a bigger high school. There are opportunities. Other schools have not just varsity level, but you have club level sports. You can still play baseball for Lake Travis, wouldn't be a varsity sport, it'd be a club sport. But you could go play against the other schools in the area. So there's ways to look at it. I think we have to keep all options on the table until we look at the pros and the cons of all the different models out there. And let's get creative. Could we potentially petition UIL for additional varsity sports within the same school? I don't think it's ever been done, but no reason we couldn't ask and potentially put together a petition that says, because of the school size and the dynamics of the community, could we still have that? So I think we have to keep all options open before we make a decision one way or the other.
One thing that people know about me is that I'm very opinionated. So you split the high school. There's no reason to have the high school that large. You have a middle school campus that was there. You combine those two campuses. It is a long walk. There's no reason to have those two campuses there. There's no reason to have ninth graders in one side. You're dealing with a whole lot of stuff that comes with a campus that size. It is really dumb. There's no good reason to have a school that large. It's easy to focus on the sports teams, but it goes all the way down. It goes into your theater. It goes into everything. Everything kids participate in. There are kids who are not allowed to participate because you don't have that many slots. So yeah, you might be putting on Hello Dolly, and there's one lead. If you have two high schools, there are two leads. So you're opening up avenues for other kids to do other things. And it's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget that you only have a certain amount of slots for something like PALS. You only have a certain amount of slots for that great teacher. You have that great teacher that everybody wants to be in their class. Well, if there's one high school, that's one person. So you hope if you have two high schools that there's another counterpart at that other school that represents that school. And they can be just as good, and more kids get more opportunities. This is about kids. Lancaster talked about not wanting to split into another high school because he said it was a career ender for a superintendent to split a high school. I don't care. This is about what the kids need, not what about this administration needs. And if you think back, the larger you go, the easier it is to get lost. I mean, that's a big complaint about UT. That's a big complaint about these huge colleges, is that you get lost in them. You always go and you get lost. And so you're having a high school out here that is getting really large, that your kids are just getting lost. Your teachers can't impact them all. The services aren't there for them all. If you break it in half, they all have another Coach Carter. They have another coach out there. So they have a coach that, instead of having this massive football team, has a smaller football team. And I think we've all heard the stories about how important coaches are to a lot of kids' lives. Coaches can't juggle 1,000 freshmen, but 500, that's possible. You can learn that many kids' names. You can interact with that many kids. And so it's not about winning state titles. It's not about that. It's about making our kids good and giving them opportunities. Because you never know when that kid doesn't even get a shot to play, that may have ended up playing collegiately, but he didn't get a shot. I mean, if any of you follow college, you'll find a lot of kids don't sort of blossom until they're seniors. And so if you don't have shots out here, you don't have that opportunity, and it's lost forever. So I think it's important to realize that there would be a lot of advantages to going ahead and splitting that high school right now and taking the burden of more administration and the higher cost of having two buildings. But I think it's probably time to go ahead and do that, so that you get back to the point where that all your kids who want to participate are at least getting a competitive advantage there and not being lost because you have 5 all-stars playing basketball and your kid's never going to get that opportunity.
Thank you guys. You guys can take a seat. Lakeway City Council candidates, if you guys will come up, there's 7 of you. That's why there's 7 chairs. And you can sit in any